Hi, this is Maria Elizabeth, and this is Relationship Alchemy Live. You might be able to hear the construction in the background. They're building a restaurant on the ground floor of my building, and it actually sounds like they're building it in my apartment. So I've got headphones in, I've got a mic, and I hope that the sound is good for you. If you're watching this, let me know, because I have no way of knowing if you can hear me at all. Today we're talking about why your inner critic keeps biting you in the ass. And I'm so excited for this topic. This is one of my favorite topics. And I'm just so excited to share my ideas about the inner critic with you because it's something I've worked with a lot. If you're here and you're watching live, please drop a hashtag live down below. I'd love to know who's here. And if I can't see your name, give StreamYard the permission to show your name to me. Like if you're inside of my Facebook group watching, I won't be able to see who you are. So you have to give StreamYard the permission to share your name with me. If you're watching the replay, let me know that too. If you'd like the show notes, if you want to get your hands on the show notes for this episode, drop the word notes in the comments and I will make sure you get those. And if you want a really quick snapshot for how you're doing in your relationships, drop the word partnered or single below, and I'll send you the link to my quick assessment. It takes about 4 or 5 minutes, and it lets you know really quickly what's working well and what could use your attention to improve. Now, all right. So coming over to the comments. Hi, single. I can't see who you are. So would you drop your name for me? I'd love to know. Hi. I can't see who you are. So I'll find you later. But if you could either give StreamYard permission or drop your name, then I'll know to look for you and get you that link. All right. So today we are talking about why your inner critic keeps biting you in the ass. Have you noticed this? You're trying your best, but it seems like no matter what you do, your inner critic just won't stop criticizing you. And then it can be really hard to stay motivated when your own head is what cuts you down the most. Today, I'm going to help you understand and shift your relationship to your inner critic so you can finally move towards your goals and your desires with more ease and with more of a unified will. So like you're not fighting yourself all the time. Number one, the first reason why your inner critic keeps biting you in the ass, hi, Tommy, why your inner critic keeps biting you in the ass is that you're trying to shut it out. It's like a toddler. When you ignore a toddler, they scream louder, right? So when you ignore your inner critic, when you try to shut it out, shut it up, send it away, kill it, as some people even teach. Not my style. When you're trying to do all those things to get rid of it, it gets louder and it bites you in the ass even more. It's like any problem in your life that you shove under the rug. It's going to come back with a vengeance at some point when it has the opportunity. So the first piece to think about with respect to your inner critic is, am I trying to cut it out? Am I trying to resist it? Am I resisting it? Am I hating on it? Am I wanting to kill it? If so, that's probably why it's getting louder and has gotten louder and more uncontrollable. The second piece is the reason why your inner critic keeps biting you in the ass. Second reason is you don't yet understand how much it loves you. When you have an adversarial relationship, a confrontational relationship with your inner critic, again, it's going to shout louder because you're not listening, and you're going to miss how much it loves you. And I wore this t-shirt for you today. I hope you can still hear me as I move the mic to the side because this construction is hella loud. I have this shirt and it says love now. And it's a ferocious tiger. Can you see that? So this is like the inner critic. When I was looking in my closet this morning, I was like, oh, what am I going to wear today for this live? And I was like, oh, that ferocious lioness, I think she's a lioness, that ferocious lioness saying, love now, love now. That's like your critic. She shows up like this ferocious lion, and she's actually pointing you toward where you need to love yourself more. However, the way she communicates is often not a way that you can hear, right? Because when somebody's shredding you, when somebody's cutting you down, when somebody's telling you everything you're doing is wrong and you're not good enough, and how dare you want these big things that you want, who are you, whatever it is that your critic says, when things are communicated like that, they're really hard to hear. It's hard to hear the love. All you hear is the criticism. Am I right? Let me know in the comments if this is true for you too. So let me give you a little backstory here in the middle of these. I'm going to give you a 0.3, but first we're going to go down a bit of story. So when I was in graduate school, my second graduate school, my MFA in poetry, my inner critic got so severe in my second semester of my freshman or of my first year. It was a 2-year program, 2-year MFA. My inner critic got so severe that I was really having trouble even writing a poem at all. And I had to bring a poem in every week for class, for workshop, to be workshopped. And part of it was that my teacher that semester was somebody I really looked up to, like a lot. In fact, it was his recommendation that actually helped me get in the program. So I just felt so much pressure to perform well, which of course made my critic go bananas. Because why? Because my critic wants me to perform well. It just communicates that in a way that makes me ineffective, that makes me paralyzed, right? For most of us, our critic really wants us to perform well. It wants us to be better. That's why it's haranguing us. But the method of trying to get us to be better is often destructive. So it's not the critic itself it's not the critic itself that's destructive. It's the way that it's communicating that's harmful. But the critic itself has the right to exist. It actually wants something for you. And you can change that relationship, as I did. The third piece to keep in mind is about why your inner critic keeps biting you in the ass, is that you haven't yet developed approval for all of yourself. So most likely, you're not in approval of having a critical voice in your head. You're probably not in approval of your ambition, whatever the big thing is that you want, that you're shredding yourself about. You may not be in approval of wanting that. You may not think you're worthy of wanting that. You may also shame your unworthiness. In other words, when your unworthiness comes up, you may, just like with the inner critic, try to shove it away or make yourself wrong for having questions about your worthiness. You're not wrong for having questions about your worthiness. You grew up in a culture designed to have you question your worthiness unless you buy something. You grew up in a culture that teaches, if you're in the West, you grew up in a culture that teaches that you deserve love based on what you produce. You deserve love based on how well you perform. If you get an A, then you deserve love and approval. But if you don't, shame. Am I right? Are you with me? Let me know in the comments. Is this resonating? What are you taking away so far? Let me know. All that to say, until you truly do the work to develop approval for all of yourself, even your inconvenient, potentially self-sabotaging, nasty bits, those bits are going to tend to come out at the worst time. So by learning how to shift your relationship with your inner critic, by coming into approval of your critic, by coming into approval of yourself who has a critic, by doing that work to shift that relationship, it helps you on the road to fully accepting yourself. Fully accepting yourself doesn't mean you don't do the work to grow. You can fully accept where you are and still have a clear idea of where you want to go and do the work to go there. So you can, it's a both and. It's a both and. Can you love and you accept yourself exactly as you are right now? And also know that there are aspects of yourself that you want to shift, that you want to have be more functional, you want to improve, you want to get better at. In my case, I wanted to get better at navigating my own critical voice, right? In my second semester of my MFA program, I had to get better at navigating that voice, or else I was going to fail out of the program because I wasn't going to produce any poetry to be workshopped. So I had to shift that. And the work I take people through to shift it, first of all, is super powerful. Second of all, life-changing. For example, I was teaching a segment on the inner critic in an accelerator for one of my mentorship programs. They highlight different students during the accelerators. And so I had a slot to teach, and I was teaching about your inner critic loves you. And one of the students wrote in the chat, "This is the first time I have ever been encouraged to make peace with my inner critic rather than push her aside." Fucking brilliant. Coexist. Exactly. And I would go even a step further beyond coexist, actually befriend your inner critic. Get to know it. Invite it to contribute at the right time. So one of the things I did with my inner critic was I worked out an agreement where my critic would sit aside and let me write, because the creative generating of material needs to just come through. It just has to come through. The first draft just has to come through. Then the inner critic comes in super handy as an assist in the editing process, because it can be hard to edit our own work, right? You wrote this thing. You're probably excited about this thing you wrote. You can't see it clearly. You think everything is amazing. You think, oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever written. That happens before the moment that you think, this is the worst thing that I've ever written, and this will never see the light of day. That's a part of the process, right? But eventually you get to dispassion. You get to, a dispassionate view, meaning you're able to see the thing clearly so that you can cut what needs to be cut and keep what needs to be kept. This is true of any kind of writing, any kind of creative endeavor that you're doing. You got to be able to, as they say, kill your darlings, but you can't kill your darlings till you can look clearly and see what your darlings are that you're hanging on to, that turn of phrase, that idea that might be beautiful, but doesn't serve this particular poem, or doesn't serve this talk, or doesn't serve this essay. Then you take it out and you stick it on another document. I call it my good ideas graveyard, but you can find your own name, and you just have another document where you have those beautiful turns of phrases or those ideas that didn't fit. And your critic can be helpful in editing your work clearly. So that was the shift that I created with my own inner critic, was like, hey, can you sit to the side while I actually create the thing? And then I'll invite you in to help me edit so that I have a clear mind when I'm editing and can see what to cut. That's one example of a way to shift your relationship with the critic. Another way is by really understanding and asking your critic even. I taught this when I taught this to the students at the accelerator. I had them do it in a journal. When I do it in a client session, I'm doing this with someone personally. I'm having the conversation with their critic, helping them facilitate it. And ask with curiosity, what do you want for me? What is it that you want for me? I understand that you want something for me, but the way you're communicating with me, I can't hear it. There's too much this and not enough this, right? There's too much of the ferocious lioness and not enough of the love now. So I can't hear you, right? Something like that. And so start a conversation and get curious. And invariably, what I've found, once someone is really able to get in there and have a real conversation, invariably they're blown away by how much their inner critic loves them. And then we can get to work on shifting the relationship in such a way that it's not harmful and holding them back, but rather becomes part of their support team. Because to do big things in your life, you need a strong inner support team. And if you don't have that, it gets much harder. Like if your head is constantly fighting you as you're trying to go for what you want, as you're trying to open up and love somebody, if you're in a relationship, or if you're trying to create big things in the world, and your head is constantly against you, it's really hard. It's like having your foot on the accelerator and the brake at the same time. It fries the system. And it also makes your transmission unclear. Whatever you're trying to transmit to others, it gets unclear, it gets muddied, because there's this accelerator and brake happening. So people can feel the sparks, but they don't know what it is. They just know something feels wonky because it's wonky in there. Am I right? Are you getting what I'm saying? I'd love to know how this is landing. I see that co-insist landed with, if this is still Tommy, I co-insist landed with you. I'd love to know, because I'm going to recap if I don't hear any questions or see any questions in the comments or anything like that soon. I'm going to recap what we've covered today. And again, this is one of my favorite topics, and people just do not give the inner critic and any of our inner dialogue that is less than convenient. They just we don't tend to have a lot of skill on how to navigate it. All right, so I'm going to recap. Today we're talking about why your inner critic keeps biting you in the ass. You've been trying your best, but it seems like no matter what, your critic just won't stop criticizing you. And it can be hard to stay motivated when your own head is the thing that's cutting you down. So today I'm helping you understand and shift your relationship to your inner critic so you can finally move to your goals and desires with ease. I became fascinated by the inner critic when I was in graduate school. And in 2008, I was getting my MFA in poetry. And in 2008, my critic got so debilitating that I had trouble writing at all. And so I really had to learn how to work with it. And I went back to work that I had learned 10, 15 years before around how to dialogue effectively with different aspects of ourselves, and started doing that work with myself. And in that, I was able to shift my relationship with my inner critic. I was able to have it allow me to write And then to assist me in the editing process when you need a clear eye, which the critic has, even though the way it communicates is often not helpful. The first reason your inner critic keeps biting you in the ass is that you're resisting it. You're trying to shut it out. Maybe even you're trying to kill it. And it's like a toddler. If you ignore a toddler, it screams louder. It throws a tantrum. So your inner critic might be throwing a tantrum because you're trying to ignore it. So the ninja move here is to turn and actually put direct attention on it and begin to get to know it. And this leads me to part 2, which is it bites you in the ass because you don't yet see that it's coming from love. I come from a baseline foundation of every single part of you inside of you loves you. It wants the best for you, but often how it's communicating doesn't let you feel that. It's like a horse that's in the starting gate of a race with those blinders on, so it's not distracted by the other horses. So your inner critic is like a horse. All it sees is its own way to try to have you be better, which is through criticism, and often makes you more paralyzed rather than making you better. But it doesn't know that. It's just trying to do its job. So the second piece is you got to develop some compassion for your inner critic, understanding that it's got a lane and it's sticking to it, and get to know it. Try to feel for how it could be coming from love. And from there, you can renegotiate the relationship. When I was teaching this work a month ago to some students, one of the students said, "This is the first time I've ever been encouraged to make peace with my inner critic rather than push her aside." Fucking brilliant. Coexist. Exactly. So my invitation to you is to not only coexist, but also befriend. That's the invitation. And your inner critic will start showing up differently for you. Number 3, the other reason why it keeps biting you in the ass is that you haven't yet developed approval for all of yourself. So as long as there are parts of you that you would rather push aside, ignore, disown, cut off, you're going to have loud inner voices like this. They're going to be loud. They're going to be inconvenient. They're going to cut you down. And so the work really is one of learning to befriend every aspect of yourself, not so that it can take charge. Like the inner critic gets to be in the car. It doesn't get to drive the car. It can sit in the back seat, and I'll ask it to speak when it's time, because I'm the one driving the car. And this is a lot of the work I do with my clients, is helping them install their own adult in the driver's position of the car. If that metaphor doesn't make sense, leave it. So today we've been talking about why your inner critic keeps biting you in the ass. I'm Marie Elizabeth Molly. If you don't know me, I'm a relationship transformation expert, which includes the relationship with yourself first. And I help growth-oriented women transform the patterns that get in the way of having more love and connection inside and out. And my business is called Relationship Alchemy. My podcast is called Relationship Alchemy. You're invited to subscribe. I just found out it's in the top 10% of podcasts worldwide, which is super cool. So you're invited to subscribe to that. And until next time, remember that a great relationship starts with you.